My daughter tempered with my car, but regretted it when she saw her husband driving in it. That is the story I am about to share, one that still leaves me trembling whenever the memory returns. I am Clara, born in 1969 in a small town filled with narrow streets, echoing laughter, and the scent of ripe mangoes in the air. Back in 2005, when I was 36, I lost my husband unexpectedly. He was my rock, my companion, and the father who doted on our only child. I felt broken, torn into pieces no glue could ever fix. But then something happened that changed everything. Today, at 56, sitting in my living room with the ticking clock keeping rhythm beside me, I'm finally sharing this story because it carries a lesson for every home. If you're listening, drop your city in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a story that might just speak to your own heart. The words still ring in my ears. I leave my house, my land, and the car I cherished to my wife, Clara. She stood by me in sickness and in health, and she deserves the fruits of my labor. Those sentences caused a deep silence in the room. Some nodded approvingly, others avoided my gaze. But my daughter's face tightened in a way that pierced my heart. She was 20 at the time, full of fire and ambition, and convinced that her father had loved her most. To her, the inheritance felt like betrayal, as if her future had been stolen away. At first, she said little, but I noticed the shift in her behavior. Where once she laughed freely and called me her sweet mama, she now spoke with sharpness, her tone like knives pressed against tender skin. She stayed out late, often whispering into her phone with friends I had never met. When I asked, "My dear, what's going on with you?" she would shrug and say, "Nothing, Mama. I'm just tired." But the truth was there, hanging in the air between us like smoke from a fire no one had put out. It wasn't just any car. It was the one her father had polished every Saturday morning, until the blue paint shone like ocean water under the sun. I drove it sparingly, mostly to church or the market, yet each time I did, I caught her eyes following the wheels as though the car itself was mocking her. One afternoon she muttered, "You don't even need it. Why hold on so tight?" I placed my hand on hers and replied gently, "It reminds me of him. This is not just metal and tires. It's memory. It's love." She pulled away, frustration tightening her lips. They visited the house, clattering up the stairs with music blasting from their phones, laughter bouncing off the walls. I overheard them sometimes, their voices low but sharp enough to cut through the plaster. One said, "If you really want to live your life, stop letting her control you." And another chimed in, "Think smart. That car, that land, they're supposed to be yours." Their words slithered like snakes into her ears, and though I pretended not to notice, I could see the venom taking effect. There was a day she confronted me openly. She came into the kitchen, slammed her palm on the table, and declared, "Why is everything in your name? Don't you see I need a future too?" I paused, the knife still in my hand, onions half cut, tears already streaming from their sting. I looked at her, my own flesh, my child who once clung to my skirts, afraid of thunderstorms. And I whispered, "Your father trusted me to protect this home, and I will not fail him. But nothing here is closed to you, my child. One day you will understand." She scoffed and stormed out, leaving me with the echo of her disappointment. Even my sisters noticed the tension. At a family gathering, one of them teased lightly, "Clara, better watch that girl. She stares at you like you're guarding a treasure chest." I forced a laugh, but deep down my stomach churned. I knew envy when I saw it. It's like a shadow that grows larger as the sun sets, swallowing even the brightest faces. Remove this stone of jealousy and replace it with love. I cooked her favorite meals, left small gifts by her door, even shared stories of her father's sacrifices, so she might see the meaning behind his decision. But the more I reached out, the further she drifted, like a boat pulled by currents beyond the shore. The turning point came when she returned from school one evening, her expression unusually dark. She barely greeted me and went straight to her room, slamming the door. Hours later, I passed by and heard muffled laughter, her friends' voices buzzing through the phone speaker. "If you want freedom, you know what to do," one urged. Another voice added, "That car is her lifeline. Do something about it." My heart clenched, though I didn't fully grasp their meaning. Looking back, I wish I had confronted her then, demanded answers, shaken her until the truth spilled out. But motherhood is not always bold. It is often cautious, gentle, and sometimes blind. I convinced myself it was just talk, young people releasing frustration. I didn't realize that the seed of envy had already been watered enough to sprout. Life inside the house grew heavy, like a storm cloud refusing to burst. I avoided arguments, choosing silence instead of fire, but my silence only deepened her resentment. She began avoiding meals with me, claiming she had already eaten with friends. The laughter that once filled our home was gone, replaced by the sound of doors closing and muffled sobs she thought I couldn't hear. My husband's handwriting on the key tag, just his initials, seemed to glow in the dim light. I thought of our last drive together, the way he had rested his hand over mine and said, "If anything happens to me, promise me you'll keep going." Tears blurred my eyes. I whispered into the quiet, "I promised, my love." But our daughter, she's slipping from me. It was at that moment that I realized envy was no longer a distant threat. It was here, sitting between us, whispering lies to her, trying to destroy the bond we had built. And though I didn't know the depth of her plan, I could sense something dangerous brewing in her heart. I carried this burden silently, too ashamed to tell anyone. To admit that my daughter resented me felt like betraying her, as though speaking it aloud would seal her fate. So I endured, praying harder, hoping for change, clinging to the belief that love would win. But love alone, I would soon discover, is not always enough to shield you from the fire of envy. And the next step my daughter took would prove just how deep that fire had burned inside her. I wish I could say my daughter's envy ended with sharp words and cold silences. But the truth is far darker. The whispers from her friends became seeds, and soon those seeds grew into poisonous fruit. She stopped coming home right after school, lingering instead in corners I did not know, speaking to people whose faces I never met. I could see the shadows of decisions forming behind her eyes. One evening she returned home unusually restless, pacing the sitting room, her fingers tapping against the arm of the couch. I asked gently, "My child, what weighs so heavy on your mind?" She forced a smile, shook her head and muttered, "Nothing, Mama. You worry too much." But worry is a mother's constant companion. My spirit told me something was wrong. The car became the center of her thoughts. She stared at it whenever we returned from church, her gaze sharp as a blade. Sometimes, she even ran her hand along its hood, as though weighing whether to embrace it or strike it. I tried to remind her of its sentimental value, telling her how her father once saved for years to buy it, how he refused to sell it, even when we needed money for hospital bills. "This car," I said one afternoon as we washed it together, "is not wealth, it's memory. It holds his scent, his touch. I feel him near whenever I sit inside." She nodded absent-mindedly, but her eyes betrayed her. I overheard one of their voices on the phone one night, urging her with mockery in the tone, "If you're tired of living in her shadow, do something. You're clever, aren't you? That car is all she clings to deal with." And watch her crumble. My chest tightened as I pressed my ear against the wall, hearing her reply in a voice both hesitant and hungry, "But what if something happens?" The other girl laughed. "Then fate has played its card. Stop being soft." I wanted to burst in, snatch the phone, and demand answers. But fear rooted me to the floor. Fear that confronting her would push her further away. Fear that I would hear her confirm the darkness I already suspected. So I stayed silent. A silence that haunts me to this day. It was on a Saturday evening that she carried out the unthinkable. I had gone to visit my neighbor, an elderly woman who often asked me to help her with groceries. My daughter stayed behind, claiming she needed to study. Later, through her own tearful confession, I would learn that this was when she acted. With trembling hands, she tampered with the car's brakes, loosening them just enough to cause disaster. She thought she was clever, that no one would suspect her, that one day soon, the car would claim my life, leaving everything in her hands. She imagined my funeral, the inheritance in her name, and her friends cheering her on. But even in that dark moment, a flicker of doubt troubled her. She almost backed out. But envy is like a chain. It drags you further than you ever planned to go. So she finished what she started, wiped her hands, and pretended nothing had happened. I returned that evening to find her strangely cheerful, offering to serve me dinner without my asking. She even sat across from me, asking questions about my day. My heart swelled with cautious hope, thinking perhaps she was softening at last. I did not know then that her smile was a mask, hiding a storm that would soon rage. The cruel twist of fate arrived swiftly. Not long after dinner, her husband stopped by. He was a kind young man, respectful and hardworking. He greeted me warmly, then noticed the car keys on the table. "Mama," he said, "let me use the car. I need to run a quick errand before it gets too late." I saw my daughter's body stiffen, her hand twitching, as if to snatch the keys away. But she forced a laugh and said, "Sure, go ahead." Her voice cracked ever so slightly. He picked up the keys and left whistling, completely unaware of the death trap waiting outside. The moment the engine roared to life, my daughter's composure shattered. She ran to the window, peering through the curtains, her breath coming in ragged gasps. I noticed and asked, "What's the matter, my child? Why are you shaking like this?" She turned toward me, tears brimming in her eyes, but she could not answer. Her lips parted and closed like someone drowning. Words caught in her throat. She began dialing his number frantically, her fingers trembling so badly, she nearly dropped the phone. Pick up," she cried, her voice breaking. "Tell me what's wrong." But she only sobbed harder, pressing the phone to her ear, pacing the room like a caged bird. The minutes felt like hours, as she tried again and again, desperation thick in her voice. My heart pounded as I tried to understand. "Is he in danger? Speak to me," I demanded. But still, she stayed silent, trapped in her own fear. Then came the call. A stranger's voice spoke through the speaker, telling us the car had crashed on the main road. My knees gave way, and I grabbed the edge of the chair to steady myself. The caller assured us he was alive, that an ambulance was on its way, but the car was destroyed. Relief and dread twisted together inside me, leaving me shaking. I looked at my daughter, and in that instant, I saw the full weight of guilt descend upon her shoulder. She clutched her chest, gasping for air, before collapsing to the ground. I knelt beside her, cradling her head in my lap. "Talk to me, my child. What have you done?" At last the dam inside her broke. She sobbed uncontrollably, words spilling out like poison finally released. "Mama, I tampered with the car. I thought it would be you. I didn't know he would take it. I didn't know." Her confession hit me harder than any blow ever could. My own daughter, the child I carried in my womb, the one I sacrificed for, had planned my death. I sat frozen, stroking her hair as tears poured down my face. Part of me wanted to scream, to curse the day I ever spoiled her. But another part, the mother in me, ached with sorrow. How could love twist into something so dangerous? How could envy blind her so badly? As we waited for news of her husband, the house felt like a tomb. Silence pressed in on us, broken only by her sobs and my own labored breathing. The weight of her actions filled the air, making it hard to even speak. And though he survived that night, though God's mercy spared him, nothing could erase what she had done, or the bitter lesson that was about to reshape our family forever. When the call came that her husband had survived, my heart nearly stopped. The stranger's voice explained he had only suffered minor injuries, a fractured arm, some bruises, nothing fatal. I sank into my chair, overwhelmed by relief, but my daughter collapsed on the floor in a heap of trembling and tears. Her sobs shook the room, raw and unrestrained, louder than any cries I had heard from her even as a child. She kept repeating, "It should have been you, Mama. It should have been you, but I didn't mean it for him." The sound of her words sliced through me. I wanted to cover my ears, to deny the reality, but truth has a way of clawing its way into the open. My daughter had tried to take my life, and in doing so, had nearly taken the life of the man who loved her. I knelt beside her, my own tears soaking into her hair, whispering, "Why, my child? Why would you do this to me?" She clutched my dress, as though it were the only thing keeping her from drowning, choking on her words. "I was jealous, Mama. Everyone said you took everything. I thought if you were gone, I could finally breathe." The ambulance sirens wailed in the distance, pulling us out of the pit of confession into the reality of consequences. We rushed to the hospital, my daughter silent beside me, her face pale and swollen from crying. When we entered his ward, he lay there with his arm in a cast, his face bruised but alive. He smiled weakly when he saw us, unaware of the storm swirling beneath the surface. "Don't cry, my love," he said to her. "I'm fine, just a little scratch." That single moment was unbearable. Knowing the truth he did not yet know, she broke down again, falling to her knees by his bed. "It's my fault," she wailed. "It's my fault you're here." He stared at her in confusion, then turned to me, searching my eyes for explanation. I could not speak the words stuck in my throat, heavy with shame. So she poured everything out herself, confessing how she had tampered with the car, how envy had clouded her heart, how she had planned her own mother's death. The silence that followed her confession was so thick, it seemed even the machines stopped beeping for a moment. Her husband's face was drained of color. He turned his head away, covering his eyes with his good hand. "Why?" he whispered. "Why would you do this? To your own mother? To us?" My daughter crawled closer, reaching for him, but he recoiled. "Stay back," he said firmly, pain in his voice sharper than the injury in his arm. She broke apart all over again, sobbing into the cold linoleum floor. The days that followed were a blur of police reports, family meetings, and endless questions. The authorities wanted to press charges, but I begged for mercy. I told them she was still my child, that she had lost her way, that prison would crush what little hope remained in her soul. Some of my relatives called me a fool. "She tried to kill you, Clara," they shouted. "What if she tries again?" But my heart, battered as it was, could not abandon her completely. I carried her for 9 months, labored through the pain, nursed her through fever. How could I now hand her over to chains? Her husband, though alive, withdrew from her. He stopped visiting her room, avoiding her calls. The love that once bound them seemed broken, like glass shattered across a floor. She would sit by the window for hours, staring out as though waiting for him to change his mind. Sometimes I caught her whispering to herself,
I ruined everything. I ruined it all. One evening, she came to me, her face streaked with dried tears. She knelt before me and took my hand. "Mama," she said, her voice trembling, "forgive me. I don't deserve it. But please, forgive me." I looked into her eyes, and for the first time since the accident, I saw not envy, not anger, but a broken girl desperate for redemption. My heart cracked open. I pulled her into my arms, holding her tightly as I whispered, "I forgive you, my child. I may never forget, but I forgive." Love cannot die, even when wounded. Yet forgiveness did not erase the consequences. The car was gone, crushed into metal scrap. Her marriage stood on shaky ground, trust shattered beyond easy repair. And though I forgave her, she still carried the guilt, like a heavy stone on her back. She confessed to her friends too, those who had encouraged her dark thoughts. They mocked her at first, calling her weak for crumbling under guilt. But she told me later their laughter only deepened her shame. She cut ties with them soon after, choosing solitude over poisonous company. Her husband eventually returned to her, but their love was never the same. They lived together, yes, but there was a wall between them, built from broken trust and painful memories. My daughter learned to carry her guilt, like a shadow, never fully escaping it. Sometimes, I caught her staring at old photographs of her father, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. I knew then that she finally understood inheritance was never about money or cars, but about love and legacy. Years have passed since that night, and still, the lesson remains etched in our lives. I tell this story, not to shame her, but to warn others. Envy is a fire that burns the one who holds it first. My daughter set a trap for me, but fate turned it upon her own home. She nearly lost her husband, her freedom, and her soul, all because she let jealousy rule her heart. And so, if you hear my words tonight, let them sink deep. Guard your heart from envy, because it steals joy, it poisons love, it destroys family. Choose contentment, choose gratitude, choose love, even when it hurts. For what you plan in secret against another may one day come knocking at your own door. But its true nature is fire, consuming first the one who holds it. My daughter learned that evil planned for another can circle back to wound the ones you love most. Protect your home from envy. Speak love even when resentment tempts you. Forgiveness may heal, but it cannot erase scar. To everyone listening, choose patience, choose gratitude, and remember what you set as a trap for another may one day destroy your own joy. Guard your heart, and guard your family with love.